Before I move on to guesstimates, let me just give a short intro of what is consulting, what are the jobs, what are the kinds of roles that are there, um, and yeah, what are the companies that are there, right? So, starting with what is consulting. So, when a company wants to say enter a new domain, or when it wants to launch a new product, whenever it wants to take a crucial decision, an essential decision that will affect its growth, or that's an important decision for the company, then it tries to make that decision more strategically. So for that, it consults these consulting companies. It comes to say BCG or McKinsey or Bain. It goes to them, pays them a hefty amount of money, and in return avails their services, their consulting services. So what these consultants at these big companies do is that they do a lot of analysis, they do a lot of market research, and do a lot of analysis and come to the conclusion whether whether the company should take that decision or not. So what are the types of consulting? These are some types of consulting. These are some of the roles that I covered previously. And so what all do you need to prepare? You need to prepare for case interviews. In fact, most importantly, you need to prepare for the case study rounds that companies will be holding. So these case study rounds, I mean, whenever there's a company, say for example, some companies coming to hire from IIT Ropar for this particular role, for a consulting role or for a data analyst, any kind of analyst role, then usually it has a case study round. I mean, 5 out of 10 times it has a case study round. So for that, you need to prepare a case study, and to prepare that case study, you need to understand what is the structure that you need to follow to make that case study. And next is guesstimates. That this is something that you will be studying today, that I'll be teaching today. And of course, you need soft skills like communication, some diplomacy, all of that. Then this terminology, MECE, 80-20 rule, all of these things have been explained. But yeah, I'll be in as we move forward in the consulting 101 course, I'll be explaining all these also. So these are some of the careers in consulting: strategy, operations, HR, IT, software, sales, and these are some of the careers in management. So as you can see, these are some packages of these top consulting firms, global consulting firms. So you can say that the first table is for the tier 1 consulting firms and the second table is for tier 2. The only difference is that these are like typical consulting firms, but the second table shows firms which have various kinds of consulting. So say for example, Deloitte has focuses on technology consulting a lot, and these firms do not charge as much as compared to McKinsey, BCG, Bain, LEK, AT Kearney. All of these firms charge more, and these are like the very big consulting firms. The second table, these consulting, I mean Deloitte, EY, KPMG, these are also very huge companies, global companies, but they don't usually focus on only one aspect of consulting. They try to diversify. They try to target various kinds of consulting. So next, these are some frameworks. This is a profitability framework on the right, and in this course or maybe in next few sessions, we'll be talking through these some of these frameworks, how to use them, what are the structures that you need to follow. So here was a short overview. These are some frameworks. Uh, this is SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. You need to um, while making case studies, you need to consider SWOT analysis as as a very important tool. So this particular tool, SWOT analysis, will help you solve many case studies. But this is just a glimpse. Um, uh, there are many other frameworks like the Porter's Five Forces, Pestel framework. All of these frameworks help you solve case studies. These were some resources for preparing. This was a sample case study, and these are some more resources. So I recommend all of you to watch the YouTube Victor Cheng videos. I think there are 12 videos or something, and you should watch them. I mean, to solve all types of cases and to understand what is the sense of consulting, all of that, you need to maybe at least watch these videos. So someone asked me that from both years. I mean, people were asking from both years, from first year and the second year, that we need to know the types of cases. What are the types of frameworks and all that are used? So we'll be teaching all of that soon. These are some of the types of cases that will give you an idea of what kind of services these companies avail, or what kind of services these companies usually ask for from consulting companies. So these are market entry, profit and loss, growth. Suppose a company wants to grow, it wants to maybe grow in some, suppose, so they might give you a case like last quarter they recorded a 5% growth of sales. We need to increase that to 10%. Then there's product pricing. You need to price a newly launched product. So let me give an example of OnePlus Watch was recently released, or let's say OnePlus Band was recently released. So there is a high possibility that before releasing that product, OnePlus went to some of these top tier consulting firms, BCG, McKinsey, Bain, or any other consulting firm, and asked them how should we price this particular product. And then internationalization, company wants to go global, Paytm wants to go global, or maybe Cred wants to go global. All of these things are included in this. And mergers and acquisitions, suppose Cred and Paytm want to merge together and form a single company, or maybe Paytm is a bigger company, wants to acquire Cred. All of these things. Right, so let's move on to guesstimates. Does anyone have any question till now, or anything else? So let's start with the importance of these guesstimates. So guesstimates are covered in all types of interviews, starting from not only consulting. Guesstimates are there in data analytics interviews. Like for example, last year we had an Amex interview, American Express interview. It was for a data analytics kind of role, and in fact, it was more of a product management role. So they were hiring for both roles essentially. So they asked a particular guesstimate in their interviews. So apart from this, there are guesstimates in quant roles. For example, IRH Capital. You might not be knowing all these names, but I think as we move forward with the internship season, at least the second year will get to know more about these things, or maybe the incoming third year. So essentially, we don't need to go for precise answers in this while solving estimates. We can go for ranges, or maybe ballpark range. This is what we call that. And we just need to write the problem statement. We just need to break down the problem statement. So essentially, suppose they are asking you this particular question: number of flights taking off per day from Chandigarh. So for this, I'll tell you what are the kinds of structures that are used. But essentially, you first need to break this problem statement down. You cannot really target everything and anything. So you just need to narrow down, need to ask some questions to the interviewer to narrow down the approach, and then you can maybe structure it out, right? And the guesstimates are usually for testing your logical reasoning. They don't test maths, or they don't test your numbers, data skills. They test your logical reasoning, and also your awareness, of course, because how aware you are with some of these things, with maybe say number of flights taking off per day from Chandigarh. So you need to know that there's an airport in Chandigarh, or you need to know that so this is a very generic question. Let me take an example of this. Estimate the number of boats in Varanasi. So you might not know about Varanasi, or you might not know about whatever the city they're asking, but essentially you need to have some idea of what kind of what kind of approach you need to take while answering such a question. So you can replace this city by Mumbai or any other city which is near the coast, and which is on the coast, and accordingly you can solve. And there is some calculation involved, so you need to improve your mental maths for that. So these are some questions. let me read out some tough questions that have been asked previously by these consulting firms. Although these consulting firms don't usually visit our IIT, like the top three, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, or maybe even LEK Consulting or AT Kearney, these visit MBA colleges because they want um, people like during your MBA course, you are taught a lot about such frameworks or maybe approaches, structures, all of these things, and you work on actual cases. So that's the time when you are really prepared for this particular field. But yeah, they do come to IITs as well, at least the top two or three IITs, and they hire for associate consultants or maybe the most junior role, that is this junior analyst. And from MBA colleges, they hire for associate consultant role or maybe consultant role. So these are the roles that are entry level roles for BTech and MBA. So a typical question would be how many payphones are there on the island of Manhattan? Or maybe questions like how many hotel size bottles of shampoo and conditioner are produced each year around the world? Or estimate the weight of this building, uh, how many balls are there in this particular bag? All of these, all such questions, I mean. So first of all, there is some data that you need to know. So if we talk about cases that are pertaining to India only, for example, this particular question, estimate the number of boats in Varanasi. You need to know more about India, at least the geography of India, and some numbers. Numbers like Indian population, this is an outdated version of the population, 1.2 billion. Chandigarh population, because you are in Ropar, so it is highly likely that the company that will be visiting, it asks you questions related to Ropar or Chandigarh. So they mold the questions accordingly. And young to old ratio in India is 70 to 30, or even in the world, I think there's not much difference in this ratio. Then you need to know at least some you need to have some idea about income split. So less than 5 lakh, 40% people, greater than 5 lakh, and less than 12 lakh, 50% people are earning, greater than 12 lakh, 10%. This is in India. Then if we talk about population, there's a 40-60 split between rural and urban population. And within rural population, most people are aged between 90 to 40 years of age. And some like since I talked about this 40-60 split, you can remember this, that urban population 720 million people are there, rural population 480. These are some more numbers, some more things that you need to know. Now, it is not really possible to learn all of these or maybe remember all of these, but essentially the target is to have some idea. So, what is the area of India? It is 3,000 kilometers and into 3,200 kilometers. So, the length is 3,200 kilometers and the breadth is 3,000. So you need to have some idea, because when they ask you some question which uses all of this information, that then you'll be stuck. Uh, in some lucky cases, the interviewer might help, but yeah, mostly you are not. You are on your own. So, and what's the average size of families in India? Five. Population of Delhi, because most of the times interviewers surround. I mean, ask questions in and around Delhi, about places in and around Delhi. So essentially, need to know about population of Delhi, area of Delhi, literacy rate in Delhi, all of these things. And if you talk about, if we consider this strategically also, so Ropar is located. What's the what's the most major city that is located close to Ropar? It's Delhi. I mean, the what's the nearest tier one city? So I think it is Delhi, yeah. So it is highly likely that a company visiting Ropar would ask questions related to Delhi. And many of these firms, many of these consulting firms have their offices in Delhi and Gurgaon or Gurugram. So you need to know about some of these things. These are some other numbers. I'll share these. Okay, so I talked about clarifying questions. You need to narrow down your area of consideration. You need to ask clarifying questions. So what are these? I'll show you an example in just a bit. But before that, let me tell you about the importance of these clarifying questions. So first is they help you narrow down the area of consideration, and the second is that it helps you start building a conversation with the recruiter or with the interviewer. So it helps you get the conversation started. So you need to have some icebreaker, or you need to have something that gets you people talking, gets the interviewer talking. So this is one good way to do that. And these clarifying questions are not only limited to guesstimates. If you ask clarifying questions, this will help you in almost every type of interview. And yeah, of course, don't be afraid to ask. Then, so when I talked about this particular split, rural urban, you must have noticed that I mentioned a 40-60 split. So this is the way we talk in interviews. We use percentage to split. So whenever you talk about, so it makes your work easy also, right? So it's easy to estimate using percentages. So let's talk about young and old population. You cannot say that there are 1 million or 1 billion young people in India. It's easier to say that there are 60% or 70% young people in India, right? So that is a better approach. And in guesstimates, there are two sides of the same question. One is the demand side, and the second one is the supply side. We usually use the demand side, but you may want to approach the question through the supply side also. Both, of course, would give the same answer, or at least the same ballpark range. But these are two ways to approach the question. And even, I mean, the interviewer might explicitly tell you also that the demand side is what we are looking at, or maybe you need to solve this question through the supply side. So an example of demand side is number of pizzas bought at Domino's every day. So this is when we are talking from a demand perspective, and the supply side would be number of pizzas made at Domino's every day. So here you can talk about things like, let's say, let's structure this particular thing. Let me ask you this question: number of pizzas made at Domino's in one particular Domino's outlet. So for this, let's talk about the supply side first. So if we talk about the supply side, we can think of this in this way: that there are four workers in a particular Domino's outlet, and let's say that each worker maybe bakes two pizzas in 30 minutes, let's say, right? Or four pizzas in 1 hour. And let's say that 8 hours is the entire open time of the Domino's restaurant. So that makes it 8 hours into four pizzas per hour, per worker, that is. So 8 into 4, 32 into four workers, that is 128. So 128 pizzas are made in a particular day. This is from the supply side. The supply side is usually underappreciated, both from the interviewer's point of view and from the interviewee's point of view. Because you might think that this approach is very raw, or this is not really a very good approach. It is usually tough to solve a question through the supply side. The demand side is usually more appreciated, easier, more clean, more structured. So it is usually preferred, right? So let me solve this through the demand side. So in the demand side, there are a lot of aspects you can consider. So let's say there are, let's say that 6 to 8 p.m. is the peak hour. So 6 to 8 p.m. Every hour, around 40 customers would come, or 30 customers would come. And rest of the 6 hours out of the 8 hours, only 20 customers would come per hour. So, and each customer on average, let's say, places an order of two medium pizzas. So here a clarifying question can be that what's the kind of pizza we are looking at? Uh, is it a small pizza, medium, or large, or all of them? So I'm assuming that you can mention this assumption in the beginning, that I'm assuming that we are talking about all kinds of pizzas, pan pizza, uh, medium, large, all of that. So I didn't prepare this case before coming to this session, and you can see that I've impromptu given an answer that is at least structured and that has some kind of segmentation. So that segmentation in this case was that 6 to 8 p.m. is the peak hour, and maximum pizzas are being sold at that point of time. And otherwise, every hour 20 pizzas are sold. So accordingly, you can take on this approach. I think you can, by now, you can maybe appreciate the kind of questions that are asked, and they're quite interesting. I think uh, you will enjoy solving them. So let's take on this question before I move to some more theory. Estimate the total number of cars or light motor vehicles running on Indian roads. So I'll leave this open for you. Okay, oh, just a second. So, anyone wants to unmute and speak is most welcome to do so. Or maybe you can write this your approach in the chat box. So let me start with asking you what are the clarifying questions and what are the assumptions that you would ask the interviewer. So start with the clarifying questions. What can be possible clarifying questions that you can ask?
Like, do rickshaws and autos count as light motor vehicles?
Nice question. Nice question. That would affect the total number of vehicles. Yeah, that might really affect because some cities have a lot of rickshaws and autos. So that might really change the dimension of the answer. Okay, tier of city. No, we are talking about India, entire India. So I want you to estimate the total number of cars and light motor vehicles running on Indian roads, every Indian road. I mean, everything is included. To make this question simple, yes, we are considering only highway roads. I think that would help a lot. And okay, is it a weekday or weekend? Nice question again. So let's assume that it's a weekend. So that simply means that more people would be on the road. Less cars would be parked at home and more people would be on the road. Uh, Weekday, sorry, I mean. Let's assume that it is a weekday. People are going to offices and more cars are on the road. So these are some clarifying questions. So instead of clarifying questions, you can even tell the interviewer that I am assuming this. Is this fine or not? So that's another way to structure that clarifying question. Assumption followed by a yes or a no question. So, right, peak hours will be morning and evening. Great, great. Yeah, you can talk about the fact that from 8 to 10 a.m., more number of cars are there, and a similar kind of pattern will be seen from 6 to 8 p.m. And in between all the hours, I think the traffic would be approximately halved. So this is some approach for the same. Right. So let me tell you some more clarifying questions. So one clarifying pointer can be that we'll calculate the total number of roads, cars on roads at a given point of time. Say 3 p.m. So I'll focus only at the number of cars on Indian roads at 3 p.m. or 9 a.m., whatever. So tell the interviewer the exact time you are talking about. So that would make the process easy for you only. That would narrow down your approach. And the second one is this would also include the cars not being used and are at home, but maybe used at some point in the future. So, say for example, you have parked a car at your home. So you can talk about the fact that at 3 p.m. we'll include all the cars that are there, but I mean that will be running at this particular at some particular time. So these are two different ways to structure it. I mean, these are two different pointers. So if you take the first one, you cannot go with the second one. So the second one says that if we consider the entire day, we are not considering we are not considering a given point of time. So here uh, we can solve this in this way, that we'll include all the cars that will be used sometime during the day. They might be parked at home as of now, but they will be put to use at some point. So okay, so what's the next step? How will you approach this? How will you start this? I mean, first we need to segment, right? So we need some method to segregate this. Segregate what? Segregate the entire population. So let's start with the population. Yeah, someone wants to speak.
I wanted to speak like we'll start it
Ah,
like we divide the population into we'll consider the population percentages like top 1% of India's population will definitely have at least one car, and the
mhm.
next 9 to 10 percentage, and we can next 9 to 10 percentage will have one car, means like out of 10, 9 of them means 90% of next 10% will have one car, and then the last 89 or 89 to 90%, maybe about 10 to 20% of them have car. So we can consider it like that.
Yeah, I think that is a great approach. Uh, we can segment based on income. You've segmented based on income, right? So I think that's a
Yes.
great approach.
Yes.
I am seeing another approach here. Total population. Okay, so you're talking. Lakshay is talking about average size of five. Out of the average size of five, at least two travel on their own, either in public or personal, and 40% of income split will have 2-3 personal vehicles. So greater than 12 lakh, 10% will use personal vehicle, and we can factor in young old split. So I think you've got some idea of segmentation, and Shubham is segmented based on population, uh, private and public vehicles. Private vehicles and public vehicles is also a good way to segregate, but I think you'll have a tough time finding out the total number of public vehicles. I mean, that would be another guesstimate in itself, so might be a bit difficult. uh, and yeah, rich and middle class income categorization, this is perfect. So let's see my solution. So I have also segregated based on income only. So India has a population of 1.3 billion people. Let's assume that 20% people are living below the poverty line, and only 80%, that is 260 million people, can actually afford cars. Uh, so what are the three segments based on income? Rich, middle class, and lower income families. So within rich families, let's say, we know the fact that the size of an average family is five people, and every person owns a car in rich families. I mean, leaving out the kids, so we'll talk about four people per family. So let's talk about four people per family for all three segments. And in the middle income families, two cars are owned by one family. Again, four people per family, and lower income, one car per family. And we've left out the last 20%. I mean, this is 100% out of these 80% people of India. So that 20% of 1.3 billion people, that has been entirely left out, because those that would include people in villages, uh, or people who cannot afford cars. So these are some. This is one approach. So this will, on totaling this, you will get 169 million people. But there are many approaches, of course, and another approach is this one. This is a very raw approach, I should say, but yeah, again, just wanted to show that this is another approach. So we are talking about, again, 20% people are living below the poverty line, so that leaves us with 80% people only. And out of these 80%, an additional 40% cannot drive a car because of these three reasons. 20% because they are under the legal age of driving, 10% because they are above 70 years of age, and 10% who do not know how to drive. So again, when I calculated this from this approach, it was giving 156 million people. So if we compare this to this, I think it's a very fair estimate. So 169 versus 156. This gives you an idea that both of your approaches are quite similar. So it's highly likely that they are almost correct. So whenever you solve a question, if you have time, or if in any way you can use a second approach, do go ahead and use that approach. So, but how would you answer this in an interview? So you would not say that this means 169 million people can drive a car. You would say that there are some factors that I might have missed, like this, and there are some factors like which I could have included, like this. So I'll give you. So this means that we are talking about a ballpark range of 150 to 170 million cars. And out of these, only 60% would be used at the peak hours, say 8 p.m. So only that leaves us with only around 100 million cars. So this is an example of a guesstimate.